Hello and welcome to Swing State, where we explore the art and science of leadership, resilience, and purpose in motion. I'm your host, Mina Johl, and today's guest is Carol McGlogan, President and CEO of Electro-Federation Canada, one of Canada's top voices on electrification and energy policy. Carol represents a national network of over 230 companies that together power and support the critical infrastructure of the country. Carol and her team advocate to help shape Canada's green industrial strategy while also opening doors for a new generation of talent. In this episode, we dive into the power of systems thinking, inclusive leadership, and the importance of showing up, even when you're the only woman in the room. Carol, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Let's start right at the beginning. What first drew you towards the electrical and lighting sector? Was there a spark that pulled you in?
I would say no. There was no spark that pulled me in. I was just graduating from Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo, Ontario. I was a business graduate, and I was fully expecting that my first job was just going to be one of many, and that I was going to be experiencing many different industries and positions before I landed in an industry and a vertical that I fell in love with. Needless to say, I ended up only at one company for 32 years. And unlike what my professor said to us with regards to these 5 different companies that you would go through in your first few years, I had 5 different experiences. And I had a leader who was very supportive of my capabilities and a company who also recognized my work. And although I didn't move from company to company, the experiences and the amazing training and development opportunities is what really made me stay. So the company was Keen Wide Light in Cambridge, and it was owned by the Genlight Group at the time, was later purchased by Philips, and 32 years later, I was still with Philips and held executive positions in marketing, sales, and channel management before I came here to EFC.
That's quite a tenure with one organization. It's becoming more and more unpopular, if I can use that word, for the generation that we're getting into. I feel like even getting them to stay for a consecutive 12 months with one organization is a bit of an uphill battle. How did you maintain your mindset across these years?
Well, I'm a person that loves change and loves challenge. And I had a boss that kept feeding me with challenges. I had a boss that kept putting me on stage and pushing me where I felt uncomfortable. So for me, that was really valuable, and I learned a lot. Just having also remarkable training opportunities up front. So I would say that, yes, you're right. There's a lot of younger people that, don't even give their employers months to, I would say, show up for them. But you have to provide time for you to show up for the organization and the organization to show up for you. If it's a great organization, if you've got good people around you and you do good work, just a little bit of patience could garner you significant support and help your career progress.
You've held leadership roles across manufacturing and distribution. Now with EFC, it's a national association. What values, what principles have you carried from your younger days when you were working up the ladder?
Well, the first value was something that I had to learn. My first boss was a taskmaster. He had tremendous capacity for work. And my first 8 years at the company, I had no children, and I was married, but both my husband and I were very career oriented, and all the time and mental space I had was made available for work. And that was my only focus. It wasn't until I had my own children that I realized there was more to life than just work. And I learned to be more respectful of people's homes, lives, and grew to understand that work is only just one part of your whole life, and you need to thrive in both aspects. And this was a learning that I had from my second boss and my personal experience. He really pushed me to understand the big picture and to say that there was more to life than just work. And that is certainly something that I live by today. I also believe that you can't ask your employees to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. So you have to walk the talk. If you want people to go the extra mile, they need to see that you've gone the extra mile for them too. So that's a real important value that I look for in others as well as I expect of myself. Also, the last one is the fact that you need to respect your work. And what I mean by that is that you need to be proud of everything you do, whether it's big or small. And if you're mindful of the quality and the effort that you put into your work, it means that you're respecting the task request or the role that you've agreed to take on. So respecting your own work and what's asked of you is so important, and that will be reflected as well in, I would say, also being authentic and being true. It's really important. I never want to hand something over that I don't feel good about, no matter how big or small it is.
You took at the helm at EFC during a time of tremendous change. I mean, look at where we are over the last few years with the COVID pandemic and all of the geopolitical issues, and now the tariffs hanging like a sword above our heads. What's that one pivot point that required you to lead differently?
You know, you've mentioned COVID, and I would say that COVID, was a pivot point in many ways. What I learned during this time is that as an association, you have more value when there is a crisis. And as a leader, you can either be consumed by the crisis or you can take it on as a challenge and an exciting opportunity for you and your team. So I chose the latter. My first role was to get our team motivated and aligned on our role during COVID. What could we play? And that was to provide our members with critical support and information during that crisis, while also being their virtual industry community. So I'm really proud of what our team did, because they really grabbed on to this notion, and we responded so quickly in a period of 9 days upon activation from our board to first delay our conference, which was just around the corner. We actually shut down our offices. We then had daily check-ins for the team. We launched weekly market pulse polls to publish industry information on supply and demand. We launched our COVID portal to assemble important COVID information and best practices, and we advocated for our industry to be classified as an essential service and joined other associations to advocate for financial support. We even had a virtual annual general meeting. The board also approved a free webinar series for our members, and we did that on a monthly basis. And in December, we still celebrated the best members in the industry with a virtual awards celebration. So we tried to keep things going. So we remained as the industry community for our members, but we just communicated and interacted with them differently, but we always had their backs. And although COVID was devastating for many people and businesses, it was personally a time where we could make a difference, and for others, and that was motivating.
COVID, yes, truly was a pivoting point. And I've tracked EFC's growth, and I've also learned from yourself now more closely that EFC has become more of a trusted voice on Parliament Hill. How did you navigate the balance between advocating for policy change and staying deeply accountable to your members, many of whom are still small size and mid-sized businesses?
I don't actually see that that's actually a balance, because I believe that the policies we're advocating for will help all our members, regardless of their size. Our members are involved with grid modernization. They help reduce energy consumption in buildings and factories. They help with the expansion of e-mobility. And at the same time, our policies impact the economy in a very positive way. If Canada was greener and more electrified, it would help attract investments as companies seek low-carbon regions to locate or expand their operations. It's predicted that clean energy jobs are expected to grow to 2.68 million jobs by 2050. And when we do work such as retrofitting buildings, we can generate energy savings of up to 60% for Canadians. So, all of our members benefit from this, and Canada benefits from this. And the other thing that we talk about in Ottawa is to ensure that Canada can meet its electrification target. We think it's important that we build our domestic supply of critical products. The whole world is going through electrification at the same time. We need to do what's best for Canada So we're advocating for the inclusion of investment tax credits for grid equipment to support those companies who want to expand their operations in Canada. And that includes small and medium-sized organizations. So to me, being accountable to our members, small or large, means that we have to tell the story of how our industry impacts the growth and prosperity of Canada, and we need to focus on the implementation and supply chain management of technologies to make sure that this happens. So I don't see it as a balancing act. I see it as something that helps all of our members.
Thank you for that context. I've also come to learn that the talent and labor shortage in Canada's electrical sector is becoming more and more serious. Is there any difference from the past workforce cycles of things that might have happened and led people to either join the industry or move away from it, like happened with oil and gas in 2015? There was a mass migration outside of oil and gas, outside of the retirements and all of that.
When it comes to talent at this point in time, I think, the talent shortage, the biggest difference is that it's rooted in a demographic shift, which impacts all sectors. So this really is about differentiating your sector versus the others, because the numbers, as you know, that are leaving the workforce in all professions, it's not unique to us, are much greater than those who are entering. So you've got more pressure on a smaller pool of candidates, and there's competition to attract youth to different career and industry pathways. You can argue that the career pathway is the first hurdle. So when we think about what we need for our industry's future or Canada's future, there is a role to be played early on. Do we need tradespeople? Do we need office workers, medical professionals, arts and culture, public safety, hospitality? These are all things that are kind of formed early on. They're made at the high school level, and influencing students and parents to direct them to industries is a key to this first pathway selection. Once they've selected their career pathway, they have to select the industry pathway. And all industries have shortages for young talent, and there's so many to choose from. When selecting the industry, you have to be mindful of the growth trajectory of that industry. So you talked about oil and gas and a migration away from that. Well, that's where electrification is different, in that we are in a growth trajectory at this time. So landing in an industry with growth prospects will impact also your ability to personally grow as more opportunities present themselves in a growth environment. This is what makes the electrical industry an excellent choice for young people. There's marketing, sales, engineering, IT, HR, supply chain opportunities, to name a few. If you're interested in the trades, there's also all sorts of opportunities, from maintenance electricians to industrial electricians and power line electricians. So for Electro-Fed and our membership, our workforce is centered around the business side of the equation, and we have implemented a national recruitment campaign to attract young business professionals in sales, marketing, engineering, and IT to join our growing industry. These are the types of jobs and roles that our members have, but our members are also significantly impacted by the talent and availability of the trades, because at the end of the day, that's where the job gets done in the field. And it's a two-pronged approach. The trade discussion is not one that we personally spend a lot of time on, because there already is a lot of time being spent in that area by other organizations. And what we are choosing to do instead is spend more time on the business side of the electrification movement and the jobs that are required in our sector.
I will absolutely second everything that you shared, even from my outside-in perspective. I was listening to a recent interview of Geoffrey Hinton, who's the British-Canadian computer scientist, also called the godfather of AI. And he said pretty much all jobs are going to be consumed by AI. The only place to be safe is where you're doing some kind of hands-on work that cannot, in the short run, be replaced by a robot or a piece of technology. So plumbers, electricians, nurses, any kind of therapy practitioners, trades, to your point, those are the areas that talent should feel safer, gradually ramping the use of AI as opposed to completely getting eliminated by it. Sustainability often gets defined as decarbonization. But as a leader, how do you define sustainability more broadly? What are the people, systems, and cultures that also need investment?
So when I think of the word sustainability, and I think about it in terms of a business, or in our case, a non-for-profit organization, I think about what do you have to put in place to make sure that you are successful or relevant in the long run. So that's what sustainability means to me. And when I think about whether you're a non-for-profit or a business and what makes you successful in the long run, it's about having an outside-in mentality. Who are you serving? What is your value? And how are you keeping in touch with what is around you? So from our perspective, it's what are our members thinking about, and what they were thinking about and concerned over during COVID, for example, is much different than what they're thinking about today. And I know that when we ask them the question next year, it's going to be different again. So this is where, as an organization, you need to focus on what's important and what kind of value you're providing. So to have this outside-in mentality, it's really about a culture. It's about having, sometimes people want to ask you, where is something going to be in this many years or that many years? And to me, it's, well, if I stay close to my customer, if I stay close to my member, if I understand what's troubling them, and if we can solve problems for them, then that's going to make us sustainable over the long run. So an outside-in mentality also involves processes. So what kind of processes are you going to have within your organization to make sure that your people are looking outside in? So what's your strategic process like? How are you taking into account what's going on around you, and how are you adjusting what you're doing today and what your value position might be for tomorrow? So processes is key. The people and culture is also key, because you also have to have a flexible mindset. You also want to have a certain amount of energy in the organization that helps embrace change. And whenever you have change, you also have to embrace collaboration. So how do you attract those types of individuals? How do you make the best of what they have to offer? And how do you also ensure that everyone respects each other's inputs and their roles? The people, the culture, if you have the right processes, and if those processes are always mindful of what's going on externally and how do you have to change internally, and if it's always about setting a new bar, then I think, to me, that's how you're going to build a sustainable organization, because that organization will ultimately be flexible, outside in, whether it's customer or member oriented.
That puts great perspective. There is a lot of talent inflow and outflow happening these days as compared to maybe 20 years ago. People picked their industries and tended to stick with them for a longer period in time. Now people are comfortable with shifting. I think a little bit of that shift has to reflect in terms of the roadmap that Canadian organizations are building in terms of how they're going to, make this outside in approach work sustainably. The training processes, the hiring processes, onboarding, making sure everybody feels included, that transferable skills are being used and new ones are being challenged and developed. I think it's a multi-pronged approach, and EFC's role as a not-for-profit is immensely valuable to the member community. Carol, if you were designing the roadmap for Canada's electrical sector over, let's say, the next decade, what are some of the non-negotiables you'd want every business and every policymaker to act upon?
So when we think about the electrical sector over the next 10 years. And actually, what people are talking about now takes more than just a couple of years to solve. And first and foremost is the whole talent equation. As we mentioned earlier, this is a demographic issue across all industries. Every industry is trying to compete for the best. And you're going to need the best to lead us through this energy transition, because we will be experimenting with new technologies, new ways of doing things, new ways of bringing energy on board to Canada. So from that perspective, talent and acquisition and development is going to be one of the non-negotiables. The other thing that's being talked about quite a bit is supply chain and the scarcity of goods. The entire world is going through the energy transition at the same time. When I speak about this subject, I liken it to the COVID pandemic, where we were all competing for the vaccines. It was a worldwide competition. Every country was in it for themselves. And the same thing is happening when it comes to the energy transition. Every country wants to have a cleaner environment. We want to transition to electricity. This is a desire for many, and for all of those critical components, there's a tremendous strain on those critical components, especially as those components are shared with things like data centers, which is also blowing up across the world. So supply chain management, or a strategy or an industrial strategy around supply chain, is important. And it's important for the government as policymakers to make sure that they lay the groundwork to build the proper supply chain in Canada. And it's also the responsibility of business leaders to make sure that they are securing their supply chains for Canadian demand, because we know that a lot of business leaders are facing global allocation within their companies. And then when we take a look at the transition and the net zero environment, we have to make sure that things like that we're aligning on codes with net zero policies. So that's the policymakers, to make sure that codes are aligning. This is where we want to walk the talk. Business leaders have to pay more attention on energy conservation and clean energy as part of their operational roadmaps. So we need to try to do our best as business leaders, as well as policymakers, in making sure that we're laying the groundwork so that our businesses and our country is sustainable in the fact that we are all moving in that same direction.
Let's shift focus for a second and bring it back to you. We talked about COVID-19. We're talking about the tariff situation. And I've read through the letter that EFC presented to Ottawa describing the situation as it sits for the manufacturers and the distributors in the industry. You've led through disruption, transformation, and recovery. What has helped you stay grounded and focused through all of this change and this scale and the speed of things?
Well, I think, I get excited about change and speed and scale. So my personal happy place is if things are moving around me, and if I feel that we can make a positive difference. So whether it's in disruption, transformation, or recovery, how does EFC make a positive difference? How can I help mobilize our team to make a difference? So that's where it becomes exciting and meaningful. And that occurs even if it's sometimes not pleasant, because you have to reflect on that. So I would say that staying grounded is really just about the fact that I enjoy the pace, and I enjoy the diversity, and enjoy the challenge. So looking at it from a positive way versus a negative, and looking at it in a way where you can try to eke out something to make a positive difference, is how you stay connected.
And in the spirit of legacy, what do you hope future women in the industry inherit from the systems and pathways you've helped shape?
So to me, it's one word, and that one word is opportunity. As the industry is growing and the market is changing, women can and do make a difference in this industry. So whether or not you choose a pathway in the trades, in business, or in engineering or innovation, there are places for women everywhere, and we contribute in our own unique ways. And we know that diversity of thought and approach is important for successful teams. So it's really important that women are in this space and they do bring value in the space. And I believe that our leaders are open to new leadership and they're open to female leadership. There have been many successful examples within our industry, and the doors are open to those who really want to make a difference.
Carpe diem is a motto that I think many of us women should have front and center. We should not be under the reins of imposter syndromes and things like that, because there's so much ground to be covered, so much knowledge to be shared, developed, and so on, that we all have to work outside of gender constraints to create a more equitable path for our country. Carol, thank you for your clarity, for your leadership, and your commitment to powering a future that is both electrified, equitable, and sustainable. To our listeners, if this episode lit something up for you, share it. Swing State is where learning is in motion, where stories like Carol's remind us that progress isn't linear but always possible. Until next time, stay in motion, stay learning, and stay safe.